fellow guests, and just want to thank you for having me here today. So, the world's smallest prison. Yeah, you don't have to advance it yet. Yep. So my mom didn't want to go in there. She looked both pensive and apprehensive as she spoke of it, even years later. She said, "I didn't want to go in there because it was the smallest prison in the world. To me, I couldn't even scratch my nose." It was the golden age. It was the baby boom era. Behind was the Depression and World War II. And ahead lay new beginnings for pretty much everybody. My mom and dad's tale, it was a tale many had of that era. My dad met my mom, GI, finished the war, came back, married, had the great fortuitous event of having their first child. It was a tale for many. It was a whimsical time, if you think of it that way. My mom and dad were excited to start their new bakery. My dad did the baking. My mom worked the counter. They were 25 years old. Then one day my mom recalled, I wasn't feeling the greatest. I tried to get dressed to go to the bakery to go to work, and I fell to the floor. She went to the doctor. She went to the University of Minnesota Hospital, eventually confirmed what was suspected. She said, I walked into the hospital, and that was the last time I walked. That was the third week of August of 1952. Polio has existed for thousands of years. People are believed to be depicted with this disease in Egyptian artwork even. The disease has existed for millennia and was especially vicious in the early 1900s. Theaters and pools were closed, quarantines issued. The United States 1952 polio epidemic became the worst outbreak in the nation's history, with tens of thousands of cases reported just that year. During a brief time after polio, or somebody contracting polio, many had difficulty breathing. My mom said I would concentrate on my breathing when the doctor was around. And I remember that one day, the doctor was peeking around the corner of the door there, just watching me. The confinement was inevitable for someone in her situation. She said they decided to put me in there. That was a scary thing because the only thing sticking out is your head. An iron lung, what my mom called the smallest prison in the world, was entered through what was sometimes called a cookie sheet. The person was laid down, drawn into the metal tube, and a metal seal came and closed the airtight chamber, and then there's an opening there where the head could stick out, but it was still an airtight seal. The motorized mechanism would be turned on. There's a diaphragm on this end that would go out and in. Breathe in. It would do that for as long as you're in there. It would take over breathing for you. Polio would affect the muscles, the spinal cord, and it would affect it for just a few days, but it was a critical time. You can notice little access holes in the side of the air chamber, and that allowed your guards to assist you. And these guards were not those who were watching you as a prisoner, they were there to help you. Next slide. So when placed in an iron lung, you were commonly wheeled into a ward with others. This is a photo of the era. There are thousands of these around the country that were built after its effectiveness was found. The sound of mechanisms was all around you. As you see your fellow inmates in the same type of prison. Some were on death row. Not all came out alive during this very critical time. My mom was concerned that she is not going to make it through this time. where she knew some rolled out dead, and she wondered if she would be next. She said, then it was kind of strange when they decided to take me out of there. I was afraid to go to sleep because I was afraid I would stop breathing. She was afraid the machine wasn't there to help her breathe anymore. Though scary for many, the iron lung actually saved thousands and thousands of lives. Once in there, your effect on your body was near immediate, and you could breathe on your own. The window of concern passed for my mom as well, and she recovered enough to breathe on her own. She was in the iron lung for 9 days, which is a very common period of time for that. You can take the slide down, thank you. Polio's effect on people was arbitrary and unpredictable, as well as the very time for care and recovery. Robert Redford had a mild case of childhood polio, and he was bedridden for days. He eventually went on to win an Oscar. Itzhak Perlman, he contracted polio when he was 4 years old. It affected him in a way that he had to use crutches to get on the stage to sit down, but is considered one of the greatest violinists in the world. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he was diagnosed at age 39, and he went on to serve 4 terms as the US president. He ushered us through critical times of World War II. It's the whole period of World War II. He was probably one of the most famous people who had polio, where eventually his illness became a major part of his image. For my mom, she spent 2 months in the hospital. She worked in rehabilitation facilities for 10 months before she was allowed to go home, so almost a whole year. She was left paralyzed from the waist down. She had partial mobility, range of motion to a certain point, and then her left arm was fully mobile. Though the disease was disabling, this did not stop life for my mother. Life called. She was told she couldn't have any children anymore, but a few years after contracting polio, she was expecting her second child. It was very unusual to have a child if you were handicapped back then, and to some extent even today. She said I was a little apprehensive about having her because she was my first child after having polio. Despite the doctor's concern and her own, child 2 came without incident. She grabbed onto life, moved forward, learning new ways of doing things. She said we just had to figure out different ways of doing things, taking her out of the crib, putting her in her lap, take her to the high chair and things like that. We had to figure out the best way to do things. A few years later came child 3 and child 4. She raised the 4 of us kids without any fuss or fanfare, requesting help only when really needed. She did all this favoring her left arm. This transformed her left arm into superhero-like strength. It was even bigger than Carlos Huerta's bicep. It's an old standing joke. I had to throw it in there, and you had to be my evaluator today. Her only regret is she didn't have a chance to see you to compare. So as a teenager, I remember challenging my mom to an arm wrestling match with her left arm. She toppled it over like nothing. I then said to my older brother, try it out. Do an arm wrestling with my mom. He didn't have a chance. Then I said, Dad, try it out. It was down in a second. She toppled our left arms like they were toothpicks trying to stand up to a hurricane. My brother, years later, joked that he was just happy she used her right arm and not her left when she swatted her bottoms. Now the polio landscape has changed. The iron lung is just a museum piece. The same thing with polio. It's going to be history too at its current trajectory, with expected world eradication here very shortly. Some estimates within a year or two. In 2002, I interviewed my mom for her 75th birthday. This was approximately her 50th anniversary of being in a wheelchair. One of the last questions I asked her, what is your greatest accomplishment in life? She was quick to answer and said, my greatest accomplishment is raising my 4 nice kids. So that's a mom answer. I knew she'd say that. So I said, what else? She paused and said, I don't really feel like I did anything else. That struck me. Yes, I think the accomplishment of having 4 children of your own while in a wheelchair stands on its own. I could well appreciate that, as I had 3 small children at the time, expecting our 4th. Now, as I think about this years later, though, I would add to her list of greatest accomplishments, escaping from the world's smallest prison. Thank you.